Y'all can volunteer. I can just call on people. It's up to you. Jake, what was discussed in your breakout room? I got you, Roxanne. You keep you next.
Well, we discussed, we went over basically what the reading talked about. And then we only got to about the second question, okay. But from what I saw from the reading thesis, obviously he went over what happened to Trayvon Martin and how there was not enough done in terms of what punishments need to be dealt out to George Zimmerman, but he correlated this example to his main argument about how younger Black males or even younger adults who are Black do not get the right to, be young and make a mistake and grow from those mistakes and grow from those experiences compared to maybe someone who is potentially white, who's younger and is white and might get a slap on the wrist, for instance. But that's what I kind of got.
Yeah, no, I think it's spot on, James. I think it's Jake, excuse me, well said, right? It's this idea and the prevailing notion that young Black men don't have the ability to be viewed as young boys, right? Or don't have the luxury to make mistakes. So I think that's a very good call out. Thank you, Jake. Roxana, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I think for the thesis, like one of my classmates, I think they explain it better, but it's mostly like how the system is failing these young men, because it's like they don't have a voice, and if they do, they're taken away from that, so I feel like that's kind of the thesis around what we read, that they try to speak out and then they get killed because they're protesting or because they're walking to the store, and because the way they look like they're getting shot at by, so our system is failing them.
Yeah. And I saw what Roxana is pointing to is the larger systemic issues that encapsulate Black men, young Black boys, and make them men because they're viewed as constant threats and menaces to society. So absolutely. We'll get one more and we'll move on to my notes.
Yeah, Professor?
Yeah, go ahead, Santiago.
So I'm guessing, like, I'm not sure what Trayvon Martin was wearing that night, but also that could be another thing that may cause Zimmerman to act the way he did. I think he was just going for a snack, right? Or so, yeah, and just like Roxana said, the system has failed once again. Black males have to go through this, unfortunately. But if it was like, let's say, a white male or a brown male, it would have been a different story, But it just sucks that they don't give the right for them to, like, have, to live on. They're just they're nothing different from us. They just want to have fun, go out. But it sucks that if you go to 7-Eleven, I think 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
7-Eleven, you just walk out, boom, house officers are already shooting you, like thinking you're bad, you're a bad influence just because your skin color is Black.
Mm-hmm. Right. Santiago, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
If it's raining outside, what would you do to protect your head? What type of attire make you adorn yourself with?
A coat.
A coat to protect your head, though. That's going to protect your shoulders. How would you protect your head?
From the rain?
Mm-hmm.
Or umbrella?
Umbrella. That's one way. If you don't have an umbrella.
Sure.
A hood,
a beanie,
a hoodie,
a hoodie,
a hoodie, right?
Pretty much.
I want to pinpoint on your comment that maybe what he was wearing provoked George Zimmerman to act. How long? What week is this in? Like about week 5, week 6?
Week 5.
Week 5. Thank you, Jake. So you've been with me for 5 weeks now, right? And I'm gonna pinpoint this question to Santiago. Does my attire in this moment ill-equip me to be your professor?
What you're wearing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, regular clothes.
Regular clothes, right?
Yeah.
I'm bald headed, right? It's fucking cold outside.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to catch a cold, so I put a hood on.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So I do this to bring up this notion that regardless of what someone's wearing, their humanity should remain intact. It's very logical for someone to wear a hoodie when it's raining outside, right? Fundamentally, a hoodie is a very fucking comfortable piece of clothing, right? And to my recollection, I played sports my whole life. Everybody wears hoodies, right? So for me, and it's not your fault, Santiago, because even Black parents will instruct Black children, don't wear hoodies, pick up your pants, don't walk like that, right? And to me, that sends the wrong message. Because you trying to prevent your hair from getting wet, you may not have a belt that day, should not be justification for you to get your life taken from you, period. I don't care what you're wearing, right?
There's no reason.
I have a shirt on that says fuck America and fuck the police. That should allow me to travel from point A to point B unharassed, right? And again, I'm not faulting you for this, but I think what your statements bring up is a very common notion when it comes to ideas around race relations that even Black folks fall into, right? And it ultimately diverts the conversation from where it should be. And that's on the piss poor actions of George Zimmerman. Larshemi, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, this new generation, it doesn't have to be a rainy day where they wear the hoodie. My son, he wears a hoodie all the time. And even when it's summer, when it's 100 degrees, he still wears his hoodie outside. So it doesn't have to be when it's raining. They just, for them, just a freedom to wear anything they want. That's what he said when I say, why are you wearing the hoodie? It's like hot outside. And he's like, I have the right to wear anything I want. I'm like, okay, so. Yeah. And that's what stood out to me when I saw a video that he was wearing a white sweater and not black sweater. Usually before it was the issue was black hoodies, you know, but now this guy was wearing a white hoodie. So now it's just any color.
Right.
It's a problem for them. So, yeah.
And more importantly, that's just an excuse and a justification for their poor actions. Brandon?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying about the Black parents telling their children not to wear certain things. Because I grew up in that type of vibe where my dad told me, hey, be careful what you're wearing. You know, going to stores, make sure you take your hood off. Things of that sort. You don't want them to think that you're doing something that you're not. And I can understand it because it's more of protecting me. That was his way of protecting me, not being there all the time. But at the same time, it's like, well, I'm gonna wear what I want to wear whenever I want to wear it, you know. So regardless of what people think about you.
Yeah.
So I think I'd have to agree. It is something that we need to teach our children, but I'm kind of in the middle of it to where I would like to, you know, when I do have kids, I would like to protect them.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be real, Brandon. Right, like, so I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, right, and I oscillate. And really, we haven't gotten to the hoodie conversation yet, just because they're not really old enough to understand that. But where our conversation comes now is how do they relate to the police, right? Because all the videos that they watch just shows these police as heroes. I'm like, hold on. Let's not get too comfortable with them motherfuckers. Like, let's have a nuanced approach on how you view them, right? So my daughter understands like they're a threat, right? But my son is still kind of unpacking because, you know, boys, this whole notion of being a hero, and they very much tie heroism with the police force, and he's learning to disassociate that. Mohammed?
Yes, sir. So yeah, Professor, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm from a different culture. But what I feel like is it's really sad that how this young guy got shot, right? Got shot because and sometimes, you know, when it comes to wearing things, how can someone lose their lives just to wear a certain clothing or, you know, act in a way? Probably it's probably not even racism. it's not exactly racism. It's more like people not really liking the the general black community. Like they don't like it. It's not like exactly racism, where racism will have like different other cultural peoples being treated the same way, but it's not that. It's more like specifically to the
Black community.
black community.
Yep.
That's what I feel, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to make it quantified judgment, or like, you know, how to figure out and how to tell these people that no, like, you know, this is wrong or this is right. I mean, I don't exactly know how to tell them, because the standards that the societies have, it kind of like really contradicts with the humanity aspect that we should have in ourselves. So yeah.
You know, Muhammad, it's weird, bro. You start your comment off with like, I'm not from here, but you deliver this very profound and accurate assessment of how American racism plays out. And I think what's going to happen is when I get to my notes, what I'm talking about will become more reticent, because it's almost uncanny how in alignment your thinking is with my thinking as it pertains to this. I'm looking at the chat, and I think Tanai also brings up a very good point, right? She says it's unfortunate because what I've noticed as I've grown up is that there has been an unspoken responsibility placed on, Black people to make other people, more often than not white people, comfortable. And I agree. And I think the same parallel can be found in rape culture, right? So what happens by and large, the perpetrator of rape, not even by and large, completely, right? The perpetrators of rape culture are men, right? But you come up with all these excuses as to why women should change their behavior so men don't do their bullshit and rape them, right? That to me, it's the same premise. Oh, well, her skirt was too short. Well, she shouldn't have been drunk. She shouldn't have done all these things, right? But no, men, get your shit together and stop raping. Like that should be the only conversation as it pertains to rape culture. And I think on a movie tip or a video tip, HBO had a show called I Think I May Destroy You, and it does a very, very brilliant job of nuancing this idea and this notion of rape. And I think Tanaya is spot on in her assessment that you can't place the responsibility on the victim. It doesn't make sense, right? Dope. So what I'll do is I'll go through my notes, and then from there we'll transition into our fishbowl. So to start it off, right? If you know me, you know I'm interested in the beginnings. And he says that our society considers young Black men to be dangerous, interchangeable, expendable, guilty until proven innocent. This is the conversation about race we desperately need to have, but as in the past, we will try our best to avoid, right? So this, to me, again, situational thesis, society, which you guys all articulated spot on, society is not allowing Black boys to have a youth, right? He goes into talking about the jurors. He says those jurors also knew that Martin was at the time of his death was just 3 weeks past his 17th birthday. But Black boys in this country are not allowed to be children. They're assumed to be men and to be full of menace, right? So not only are they assumed to be men, right? They're assumed to have these very bad intentions, and they're assumed to only seek to create problems, right? This is the idea of menace. And he says, if anyone wonders why African Americans feel so passionately about this case, it is because we know that our 17-year-old sons are boys, not men. It's because we know that their adolescence is gravitas, right? It's just that, an imitation of manhood, not the real thing, right? So we understand that these young boys, when they demonstrate this trying to act hard, right? That's their gravitas, that's their bravado, them trying to situate and position themselves as men. If we think back to the first reading of the semester, pre-colonial West African manhood, right? And there were the 4 stages of manhood. We know the first stage was the rites of passage. The second stage was demonstration of physical prowess at adolescence, right? So Trayvon was an adolescent, right? So him wanting to exude that gravitas and that bravado is him just doing what he's supposed to do at that age, even before the institution of enslavement interrupted our natural flow of things, right? He was doing the innate African thing by presuming and presenting his physical prowess, right? The conversation we need to have about how Black men, even Black boys, or the conversation that we need to have, excuse me, is about how Black men, even Black boys, are denied the right to be young, to be vulnerable, to make mistakes. We need to talk about why, for example, Black men are no more likely than white men to smoke marijuana, but nearly 4 times as likely to be arrested for it and condemned to a dead-end cycle of incarceration and unemployment. This gets to Muhammad's point. I call that racism, as articulated by the author, and he ends with a question: what do you call it, right? And for me, I disagree with the author. I don't call that racism. Because to what Muhammad was saying, right, racism includes all of the races, right? All of the groups who you may call marginalized, right? Who we may inaccurately consider minorities, right? That would encapsulate all of them. But this performs in a very specified way, right? And I would say that it's anti-Blackness, not racism, because anti-Blackness pinpoints on who is being specified in this certain phenomenon, and by and large is young Black boys, right? So I think we do, within the Black community, we do ourselves a disservice by just labeling everything racism. Racism, 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 that's racist, that's racist, that's racist. Okay, but let's be more specified in our claims, right? Again, I want to prove a point, not to get into this idea or this notion of what they call oppression Olympics, right? Like our situation as Black folks is worse than yours. It's not what I'm trying to do, but to draw a point, right? Think back, last summer, maybe 2 years ago, I think it's last summer. All we're hearing about are these anti-Asian hate crimes that are being proliferated throughout the country, right? Within a 6-month time, because I'm watching this very carefully. Within a 6-month time frame, legislation is passed of an anti-Asian hate crime bill, right? That bill gets picked up, it gets moved to office in its legislation now. They should do that. I support them, I celebrate them, right? My question becomes, how is it within a 6-month window, we hear about anti-Asian hate and there's a bill that's passed to prevent this from happening, right? You could argue for African folks, right? Over 500 years, we've been going through the same type of specified hate. Not one bill has been passed to mitigate our extinction, right? So to me, we have to, as a community who's experiencing this form of persecution, we must be very careful in how we articulate our pain, because what ends up happening is we're advocating to end racism, right? And we are the last ones to receive any type of benefit that will support our material condition, right? So with Muhammad, this is why I was really impressed with Muhammad's analysis. It's performed differently, right? Think about how anti-Blackness works. Naturally, we have white folks that exhibit anti-Blackness, right? We have Asian communities that exhibit anti-Blackness. And if you're from that community and I'm wrong, please let me know. In the Arab community, there's a level of anti-Blackness. In the indigenous community, there's a level of anti-Blackness. In the Black community, to be clear, there's a level of anti-Blackness, right? I want my baby to have good hair. I like that light-skinned girl, she look cute, right? Oh, you cute for a dark-skinned. That's anti-Blackness that's performed within the Black community, okay? So we should be very specified in how we talk about our oppression, because it's not all-inclusive forms of oppression, it performs differently. So I definitely agree with Muhammad's contention. Let's transition into our fishbowl. Do know you have 2 to do per semester. You have 1 time to pass. You could talk about my notes, you could talk about the breakout rooms, and you could talk about your journal. Roxanne, I got you, thank you. Anyone else want to volunteer?
I'll go.
Okay, Brandon, thank you. You can do 1 to 2 more. Thank you, Roxanne. You know what, is it Laresemi? Is that how you pronounce that? I just want to make sure I got that right.
Irasemi.
Irasemi. You know, I don't know why I think that she's an L. I'm sorry. You
That's
told me
okay.
before. Irasemi. I think I got that. And then Muhammad, we got you as well. So for today's fishbowl, we'll have Muhammad, Irasemi, Brandon, and Roxana. Whoever wants to start it off, it's on you.
I'll start.
Get my journal. One thing I do want to highlight is one thing I want to highlight is I do agree with your analysis of within that 6-month period. I think that's one thing that really irritated me. I was happy for it, for that community, but I was also wondering, okay, when is it our turn? But going on to the journal, so I highlighted part of that. I'm sorry, I think I got disconnected.
Yeah, you sound better now though. You still there, Brandon? Let's do this. Brandon, try to log out and log back in. That may give you a better connection. And then we'll circle back to you on the fishbowl. Does anyone else want to step in real quick while we get Brandon's audio situated?
So Professor, actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one being how, as we were reading the previous passage, they're both authors and they're hello?
Yes, yeah, I'm
yeah, and they're both like contradicting on some, like kind of the same perspective of the society. And also it's like regarding this thing of as you said in your analysis, like the anti-black perspective. So I mean, I need to know a little bit about like how can, is it education or what is it? Because I mean, that's gonna get this out from all the society. I mean, I really need to know this because it kind of makes me really sad that, you know, I was reading the passage and you know, this 17-year-old guy, and I mean, it's like, it's, I don't know, I mean, people might say a lot of things like, you know, how does it look and whatever it is, but you know, they have this certain lens. I don't know, I mean, they just view it through that, but what I would view is like, you know, it's just a normal guy and you don't really understand him, like you don't know him, and I mean, you make a judgment. And also we don't even see that if the other person even holds a grudge towards you know, this specific community. and 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 I don't know, I just don't know how to take this. So just please help me out over here.
So what I'll do, Mohammed, I'll redress your question at the end of the fishbowl because you bring up some good points. Also, I do want to point to you all, what Mohammed is doing is sufficient for the fishbowl also, right? You could use your fishbowl opportunity to ask a question. To me, that's perfectly fine. Who's next?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I agree with you. Like this guy he's anti-black. He has an anti-black issue because he called a couple times during a year, only reporting black boys or black people that they've been around on his neighborhood. So, and it's obvious that he could be considered racist, but it's only against black people. So, and I think like the criminal justice has failed many times for people. Criminal justice is wrong in parts because it doesn't support a lot of people like unless if they belong in the higher class, maybe, or like in this case was what I read about George Zimmerman's father. He was someone important on the criminal justice. So, and that could be part because it fell like, even though if it was self-defense, he should be still accountable and paying few years in jail just because he shoot someone, you know, he killed someone. So, yeah.
And thank you, Sam, because like, right, and what I'm hearing from you is a few things. Very practical analysis, right? There's a very practical way of looking at this. And I think also within your comments, as well as Muhammad's comments, I'm hearing and I'm feeling empathy and compassion. And I think a lot of that's being missed.
Yeah, and that's, I think we should teach our children now, like humanity, like they have to have humanity and just, yeah, we're trying to protect our kids for everything. But sometimes when we protect them, when we tell them, don't wear your hoodie or stay away, this neighborhood, the stuff like that, we're damaging them because we don't teach them how to defend themselves. And that's, I think we think like we're doing a good thing, but it's not. We have to let them grow up and learn from their mistakes and learn how to defend themselves outside, you know? Yeah, so.
We have Brandon and Roxana left.
Okay, I'll go. I sound better now?
Yeah, you're good, bro.
Okay. So on my journal, I put that things that highlighted was it's because we know that our 17-year-old sons are boys, not men. An imitation of manhood, not the real thing, were two of the things that stood out to me in the journal. Also wrote, every time I hear about Trayvon Martin, I always think about the injustice, but what normally popped into my head is the words my father told me about the way I dressed whenever I was in public. He always told me to remove my hoodie in stores or out on the streets and when addressing people, primarily white people and police officers, to make sure my hands aren't in my pockets and to protect myself. And then growing up in South Central, most of my friends were gang members and we all carried ourselves as if we were older than we were. However, that was mostly due to our life circumstances and what we've been through. And I would be lying to you if I always told you I listened to my father when I was younger. I was from the east side, low bottoms. Nobody could say anything to me. I had respect in my hood and that's all that mattered to me. It took police officers pulling guns on me at 13 to being consistently harassed while walking the streets or having my vehicle searched to understand what my dad really meant. And one thing I always did was show respect until someone disrespected me. And I can only imagine that's what happened between Trayvon Martin and his murderer.
You know, I know you're going to go, Roxana, but this is one thing, because you know how the class is split, right? And on Monday, like the stories that were told from our community about the experiences that we've gone through, being harassed, being messed with, being all these things, it's really, it's a wonder to see how we still have our sanity and we're still able to maintain ourselves. That's a miracle within itself. Roxana?
Yeah, so just like Brandon, I'm also from South Central. I feel like I'm really from the, the South, and I also grew up with, even though being Hispanic, I grew up, my mother telling me, oh, be careful that you don't wear blue, you don't wear red. And I always wonder why, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm Hispanic, this is what's going on. But then as I grew up, I got more deep into like seeing other people getting killed because gang related. Or also 2 years ago, someone that I knew got shot because they were like, oh, where are you from? And they didn't even have the opportunity to answer that question. They just got shot. So just growing up with that in the hood and seeing the things that's going around, it kind of like upsets me. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing to change this? And even if we do a change by protesting and going out there, like people are still getting killed for that or getting arrested for having a voice. And it's funny because yesterday for one of my social work class, we saw a video called The Butmore Rising that happened in 2017. It's in HBO. So our professor put that video and it was kind of related to the article that we read. It's kind of the same thing, people getting arrested because they're protesting. And it's just like the ones getting affected is the Black people, and just seeing that. And it's just like, it's something that continues to happen. you know, and it's upsetting. I feel, and I understand Muhammad too, because it's like, what do we do? What can we do? But it's like, we have a voice, but do we really? Because we have it, we get arrested for that, or you get killed for that. So it's just like, like, it makes me angry and frustrated, because it's just like, it sucks to see that. And it's just like, I don't want to bring kids to this world because of the world that we live in as well, you know. So it's really hard. And I feel like this was a really good article at the same time. And it just brings a lot of questions, a lot of concerns out to us, you know.
Yeah, I think too, especially his home for like parents, you know, it has a different kind of affect on you. So thank you all for sharing the fishbowl. It was very well done. And I think it also provided a very diverse opinion on the subject matter. So that was really brilliant. What I want to do is address Muhammad's comments. So one, he asked about the contradiction between the two authors, right? So if we're thinking about the work of Bush in the previous 2 weeks, their argument is more so that this contemplating and investigating this idea that Black boys cannot become men, right? This is the idea, like they cannot become men. So, and think about some of the claims that were made as to why Black boys cannot become men. The female ran household, or the woman ran household, right? The lack of economic opportunities that would allow these boys to become men, right? So this is the thesis of the previous two arguments, that Black boys are unable to transition themselves into manhood. Whereas this article is saying that Black boys aren't able to be young, right? So to me, that's the contradiction in the two articles. So which one is it? We can't be men, or we can't be both boys, or is it both? We can't be men or boys, right? We cannot exist or have a being, right? So that's the first part of Muhammad's inquiry. And then he asks this question of anti-Blackness, like what can we do, right? I don't know if we've gotten to this conversation in this class yet, but I typically at some point of our semester have this conversation around your purpose and why you're in place here on this planet, right? And I argue that your gifts, your talents, your skills, things that make, you know, the hair on your neck stand up, things that you feel in your soul, right? Those are like hints at what your purpose is, okay? And so what I would encourage each of you to do is think about your purpose, right? And think about, like, how can I use those gifts, those skills, and those talents to improve the world around me, to improve my sphere of influence, right? If I can make it personal, I've always been good at like digesting information, right? I grew up in a church background. So like you spend all fucking day in church, right? You have your Sunday morning church from like 9 to 12, then you get out at 12:30, have like lunch with the church, and then by 3 o'clock you're back in church from 3 to 6, right? And so always though, my parents would be like, yo, what'd you learn? So what I learned very young was to get me a little message real quick and then go on about my bullshit. So when my parents would ask me, what did you learn? I had something to say. So I was always able to deal well with information. I was always one to bring people together, right? So for me, those skills and talents allow me to be an effective educator. So I'm here before you using my skills with information and using my ability to bring people together and my passion for improving society to be here as your professor, right? So this is me living my life's purpose. You all have to dig deep within yourselves to find out what that is. Practices like meditation help you understand what that purpose is, because what happens is you're being told messages, right? Your spirit is telling you messages. You know what I mean? Like, yo, when you feel like something's not right, that's your spirit telling you, yo, get out of there, or whatever the case may be, right? But we have become so distracted as a society, we don't know how to listen to that little voice within us that's giving us guidance and direction. And so practices like meditation allow us to turn down the noise and hear that voice more clearly, right? So that's one way that we could go about changing and making this world a better place. Secondly, education, I think you're spot on with that, Muhammad. And I think that's why it's such a contention around this notion of critical race theory. How are we going to educate the society going forward? How are we going to tell history going forward? And having conversations like we're having allows for a break in this norm that's being very damaging to certain communities. So that would be how I would address that. I'm gonna, with the last time left, I'm gonna kind of take off my professor hat and just kind of talk to y'all just on some real shit, right? We have a little barbershop talk. For me, every time I think about this particular circumstance dealing with Trayvon Martin, it incenses me that George Zimmerman is still able to have breath in his lungs. I can't come to terms with that. It's really, really hard for me to understand why he's still breathing. For those who don't know, he went as far as to attempt to sue the parents of Trayvon Martin for defamation of character. The gun that he used to murder Trayvon Martin, he auctioned off, right? So to me, this is a deplorable individual. Not long after his not guilty verdict, he's back in court for domestic abuse. He gets off with that too, right? For those who don't know Florida and certain parts of Florida, especially like Miami-Dade County, is hood. Like we have Compton, we got Watts, we got, you know what I'm saying, the jungles, we have our hoods too, but Florida has its own really specified hood. And I don't understand, out of all the goons that are in Florida that's serving all these sentences and are really quick to kill somebody who looks like them, how is it that George Zimmerman is still moving? If it were to be me, I'm on a set and I'm putting in work, my gun got bodies on it already, he ain't living no more. To me, he's not, I can't make sense of that. Let that have been my son, right? And me and my wife talk about this very often. I'm going quiet for like 5 years. You will not hear from me. I'm gonna put together a very strategic plot and strategy to get justice. And all of my financial resources, all of the resources that I have in my person will be dedicated to seeking that justice. And I don't think enough of us as Black folks, of all that we've been through, have that attitude, because I do believe that if enough of us was having that attitude, this shit would stop. Shit would stop. Like, yeah, I'm happy that the folks that did what they did to Ahmaud Arbery, they received a hate crime and they're gonna receive life in jail, right? I'm happy, but that don't bring Ahmaud Arbery back. That don't give him and his mom, their son back. That don't give his sister, their brother back. None of that is rectified, right? So this is a debt that has been going on that cannot be repaid. It cannot be repaid. You cannot pay that back. So for me, I can't reconcile that. That's a contradiction that I cannot reconcile. And yeah, I know how I feel about my son. I know how I feel about my brothers. I can only imagine what Trayvon's parents felt like, especially the circumstances that surround his death. I don't know how you bring that to reconciliation. And again, I would dedicate all of my energy, resources to make sure that that individual, George Zimmerman, will not produce another Trayvon Martin. And to me, I don't think that's outside of the realm of justice. I don't think that's outside of the realm of humanity, right? And this is why, for me, Malcolm X is so powerful. And the way that he uses Quranic texts to situate justice, right? It's an alignment. Yeah, sometimes it is. So again, that's just me. Please understand, right? Don't say, yo, my professor was talking about killing mother. No, this is me having a personal conversation with you, right? So to put my professor hat back on. Any last minute questions, comments, or concerns?
I'd have to agree with you on how we haven't spent back, you know, for that issue. Because I'm the same way. The way I feel about my brothers, the way I feel about my family, my friends, I want to spend. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I get a little annoyed hearing a lot of the music today where we talk about killing each other all the time.
Yep.
But when we get violated by somebody else or somebody's life is taken innocently, we're not spending for them at all. Yep. And that's one thing that doesn't sit well with me.
Yep. So true, Brandon. So what I'll offer to that, Nipsey Hussle has a very brilliant interview with Ebro, and it's about like an hour, 30 minutes. But in the interview, he talks about doing work for the 60s. And he says, like, when you go to pull your mission, right? And you go across into other hood territory, there's certain people who get a pass, right? You see a white man walking, you ain't gonna mess with him, right? You see a black dude walking in a suit, he'll get a pass. What you're looking for is a person who's dressed like you in the opposing color, who walks like you in the opposing color, right? Who presents themselves like you do, but in the opposing color. So in effect, what you're hunting for is yourself, right? And this is what I mean when I say anti-Blackness is pervasive even in the Black society, right? That's why you could go out hunting for yourself, because you are embedded with this anti-Blackness. And it's making you move in the way that you see someone who looks like you, who moves like you, who talks like you as a threat. So I agree with you, Brandon. That music is part of the programming that allows us to continue to view ourselves as a threat. It's a lot easier to kill a nigga, and it's a lot harder to kill your brother. But we're very comfortable with referring to each other as niggas. But brothers is a little bit more far off. Better yet, I call somebody a god that look like me, they look at me like I'm crazy. But if I call them a nigga, that's okay, right? So this is also part of this programming and how we use terminology that adds to this anti-Blackness. One more comment and we'll call it a day.
Professor.
Yeah.
As you said, George Zimmerman, he really tried to sell the weapon. Like,
no, he sold it.
Oh, he sold it. He did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's deplorable. That's awful. I can't even believe that. That's terrible. How could that even, as a society, we like say that's okay? I can't even believe that.
and then think about this, Jake. Somebody bought that shit.
Yeah,
right?
I know, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, as a society, like, why would we even like buy into that like notion, that idea? Like, yeah, this is okay. Like, it's almost as if we like champion the idea of like killing people and it's okay. It's like, no, that what happened to Trayvon? He's a kid, man. That's awful. That's terrible. I think about the family too. Like, hearing about that would be awful.
Yeah. Think about this, Jake. What happened with Kyle Rittenhouse? Right?
You gotta what? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then think about how he's celebrated for what he did. He's looked at as a hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe Trump, somebody was saying, giving him, no, not Trump, I'm sorry, I'm lying. Some senator from the state that he's from is talking about giving him a position in office when he comes of age, right? So think about that. Think about that. It may become to a time where he's passing laws and legislations. You know what I mean?
That's, it's terrible. Awful.
Another thing too, for the parents and for those thinking about parenthood, right? Yes, it's scary to bring your child into this world. Absolutely terrifying. But our job is to create a world that we feel comfortable bringing our children into. And that's our task.
I just want to tell that, you know, I like the way you say that inner consciousness is a very key factor to bring us out of this, because in after reading this passage and this discussion, I feel like we haven't improved at all as human beings. We are still in that era where there was injustice, where we're still here with injustice. And I have this question for you. Do you think we are going to achieve that justice, what we call like that, that's like real justice? Do you think as humans, because we are flawed, we still have these things happening, that the boy gets killed and then the gun is auctioned? So that's kind of a slap when to all those people who say that we have improved again, like from history. So I don't know.
Yeah, to answer your question, and we'll call it a day, Mohammed, in my soul, like in the depths of my soul, I do feel that we will improve this condition. I'm what you would call like a radical optimist, right? Like I'm very optimistic about the human potentiality. But I do think it's something that will happen over time, right? And I do think that the current systems and structures that are set in place are gonna have to be dismantled and fall for us to achieve that level of humanity and justice that you're speaking about. But here's the thing about systems of capitalism, systems of greed, and system of exploitation, right? They're gonna run themselves out. If you look at what's going on in America right now, like right now, all of its major institutions are collapsing. And I don't want to sound dystopic, excuse me, but just to call it what it is, right? Like we are literally living in the fall of this great civilization that we call the West. The dollar ain't shit. China has all of the major ports, not only in Europe, in Africa, and America is in trillions of dollars in debt to China, right? So this great empire that people think is the United States is not what it is. If today China was like, yo, run me my money, it's a wrap for America, right? So it's two things that are gonna happen. It's gonna destroy itself because COVID exposed a lot of that shit, right? And then those who are oppressed, what Frantz Fanon calls the wretched of the earth, will continue to organize, continue to jockey, and continue to mobilize to bring that justice. So I think it's going to be a combination of those two things that will allow the type of justice that you're seeking to manifest itself. It won't be overnight. It won't be without struggle. It won't be without bloodshed. It won't be without sacrifices. But to me, all those things are worth it to create a just society. So for next week, real quick, and we'll call it a day. Okay, for next week, we are doing Mandingo Fantasies. So it'll be this PDF here. I will email that out to you all by tomorrow, tomorrow or Friday, one of the two. And then if you don't want to wait for that, it's available here on the Google Classroom site. Extra credit opportunities are found here. This is tonight, the Bolo Kaja event through Pan-African Studies, and this is tomorrow night, myself in conversation around Black History Month. Other than that, you all, brilliant discussion.